Hi, so now we're going to look at 8-6, which is estimate sum. Remember, sum is an answer when we're doing an addition equation. So this I can statement says, use what I know about addition and place value to estimate sums. So solve and share. Look at the table below. Is the weight of a female and male sun bear together more or less than the weight of one female black bear? Without finding an exact answer, explain how you can decide. Solve this problem any way you choose. So it says without finding the exact answer. So I know that I'm going to estimate, which is right up here. So they want to know if 78 plus 95 is more or less than 215. So I'm going to round to the nearest 10. So my 78 would become 80, and my 95 would become 100. Remember, I'm rounding up for both of them because of the value that's in the ones. So remember, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're going to round down, and 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we're going to round up. So I can do 80 plus 100. I could do it in my head. I know that it's 180. So is 180 more or less than 215? That's what I have to answer. 180 is less than 215. I know just by looking at the number and the place values, there's a 1 here and there's a 2 here. So I already know that 215 is larger than 180. The sum of the two bears, of the two sun bears, is less than one female black bear. So again, I rounded up for both of my numbers for 78 and 95. And then I added my two answers, my two ones that I rounded in this column together, I added them together and got 180. And I know that 180 is less than 215. Okay, moving down. Why is an exact answer not needed to solve the problem? So, I know the weight of the male and female sun bear are each under 100 pounds. So, 78 and 95. Both of those numbers are less than 100. Without finding an exact sum, I know the sum of the two weights is less than 215 pounds. Because even if I were to round this to the nearest, I rounded it to the nearest 10 up above, but if I were to do to the nearest 100, I would get 100. And when I rounded 95 up above, it was to the nearest 10, which is also the nearest 100 for this. And I know that 100 plus 100 is 200, and 200 is still less than 215. So I know the weight of the male and female sun bears are each under 100 pounds. Without finding an exact sum, I know the sum of the two weights is less than 215 pounds. Okay, I'm going to turn the page. So our essential question on page 436 is how can you estimate sums? So again, we're going to look at two strategies that we can use to estimate sums. Do the two pandas together weigh more than 500 pounds? Estimate 255 plus 329. And then there's the cute little picture of the pandas here for your enjoyment, of course. The speech bubble says you can estimate to find about how much the two pandas weigh. So one way is to round to the nearest hundred. So they rounded 255 to 300 and 329 to 300. They used the numbers that were in the tens place to help them decide. So the two numbers, the 5 I underlined and the 2 I underlined, to decide if they were going to round up or down. And they added those two together. So they added 300 plus 300, which gave them 600. 255 plus 329 is about 600. And notice that they have the word about, because when we're estimating, we always want to say it is about this many. It is about this number, because we're not getting an exact number. So 600 is greater than 500. So the pandas together weigh more than 500 pounds. And then the next, it says to use compatible numbers, and the speech bubble tells you what compatible numbers are. So compatible numbers are numbers that are close to the add-ins, but easy to add mentally. So we're not going to be rounding when we're using compatible numbers. It's just a number that you can add in your head that's close to the number that they give you. So again, it's not about rounding for compatible numbers. It's just what number is close to this that I can add in my head easily. So the compatible number for 255 that they use is 250, and the compatible number for 329 that they use is 325. And they get the answer of 575. 255 plus 329 is about 575. And 575 is greater than 500. The total weight is more than 500 pounds. And again, they didn't use an exact number. They didn't even solve the problem exactly and get the final answer in either of the ways. So just know that you're just estimating to find out, or using compatible numbers to find out what our answer would be. Okay. In the convince me section at the bottom, it says be precise. So we want to give as exact of an explanation as we can and give as many reasons or examples that are specific to just the problem as we can. Just look at the numbers 200 and 300 is 500. The pandas weigh over 500 pounds because one panda weighs 255 pounds and the other one weighs 329. What do you think she means? Use numbers, words, or symbols to explain. So she means that you can add 200 plus 300 and get 500. The values of hundreds in 255 and 329 is what I used. So in 329, the 3 represents 300, which is what I used. And in 255, the 2 represents 200, which is what I used to get my 500. So the sum is 500. So my answer for that is 500. And since 255 is greater than 200 and 329 is greater than 300, the actual sum is greater than 500. So I used the value of the 2 in 255 and the 3 in 329 to add together to estimate the sum, and by explaining what Sandy meant. So basically, since I rounded down, you could say, for both of these, I know that there's still extra numbers, there's still extra amounts left. There's still 55 left in 255 that I did not use, and there's still 29 left in 329 that I did not use in my equation here. Since there are the extra amounts and extra values numbers left, I would have to add those to my total answer, which I already know then is going to be greater than 500, because by rounding down, I already got 500. And feel free to copy this work at the bottom if you have not already done so, or if yours doesn't look similar to this, or if your sentences, if you chose to write sentences, don't represent the work I showed. Okay, and moving on to our last page. It shows you another example about rounding to the nearest 10. So suppose one panda ate 166 pounds of bamboo in a week, and another ate 158 pounds. About how many pounds of bamboo did the two pandas eat? So they round 166 to 170, and then they round 158 to 160, which gives them 330. So the pandas ate about 330 pounds of bamboo in a week. And it tells you here you can estimate the rounding to the nearest 10, which is what the example shows you over here. So number 1, it says 2 addends are rounded to greater numbers. Is the estimate greater than or less than the actual sum? So the estimate is greater, and I'll tell you why after I'm done writing the word. Okay, so the estimate is greater because they rounded to greater numbers. They rounded to bigger numbers. And if they're rounding up to bigger numbers, their estimate is going to be bigger or greater than the real number. Okay, so since they rounded up, their sum, their estimate is going to be greater than their actual sum because they added more value to the numbers and made them larger, bigger numbers. For number 2, it says Mary and Todd estimate 143 plus 286. They have different answers. Can they both be correct? Explain why or why not. So if you put no, I am sorry, but that was incorrect. The answer is yes, and please listen for the explanation, okay? So yes, because they can choose different compatible numbers or round to a different place value. So if Mary would have rounded to the nearest 10, she would have been solving 140 plus 290. And if Todd would have rounded to the nearest 100, he would have been adding 100 plus 300. So both of them are correct when they're estimating. Your estimations and your estimates don't have to be the same as everyone else's because the way you round can be different. Of course, if they ever tell you to round to the nearest 10 or to the nearest 100 specifically, like they do in numbers 3 through 6 in the Do You Know How section right here, you have to round that way. But if they ever don't tell you specifically what you have to round to, then you can pick how you round or if you use compatible numbers. So it says round to the nearest 10 to estimate. So 218 becomes 220 plus 470 is what you round 466 to. And if I were to add those two together, I would get 690. 108 rounds to 110 because it's to the nearest 10, not to the nearest 100. And 223 rounds to 220. And my answer is 330 because that was all to the nearest 10, and the 5 and 6 are to the nearest 100. So 514 rounds to 500, and 258 rounds to 300, which gives me my answer, my estimate answer of 800. And then so number 6, 198 rounds to 200, 426 rounds to 400, which gives me a total answer of 600. Okay, I'm going to erase, so if you need to finish writing down 3 through 6, please pause it. In the independent practice part down here, I'm going to just write the answers. I'm not going to write the rounded equations. So number 7, your estimate answer should be 580. For number 8, it should be 850. For number 9, it should be 810. For number 10, it should be 680. For number 11, it should be 600. For number 12, it should be 800. For number 13, it should be 700. And for number 14, it should be 900. Now I am going to give answers for 15 through 18, but you could have used different compatible numbers. So it's okay if your answers do not match exactly to what I have. So for number 15, your answer could be 300, about 300. 16, same thing. It's 200, so about 200 or close to 200, hopefully. 17, 480. And then for 18, 550. So again, when we're talking about compatible numbers, you're not always going to have the same exact answer that I would get or the same exact answer that your classmates would get for their estimate. So you've made it to the end of 8-6. Yay, good for you. Let someone tell someone to let me know that you have finished this so you can get extra points. And yeah, that's all. Bye.